Years ago, a computer security podcast saved my life. This is a long overdue thank you. It's back in 2005. I completely shattered my hand and had multiple operations and procedures on it. Changed my activity level, so I couldn't do the same things that I used to do. I was on pain medication for a while and I blew up. Went from 165 to 225 pounds, and I'm 5'6". And no matter what I did to try to exercise, I would keep ballooning back up. I would go down and up and down and up. Then one day, after passing out in my car and finding myself on the side of the road with my foot slammed on the brake, waking up, I decided to go to a doctor and have a metabolic checkup. And I found that my triglycerides were off the charts. Oh, of course, they suggested I exercise and eat better, which I did. And every year I would get a little better, and then I would balloon up again and get a little better and balloon up again. And I couldn't understand why. I even started testing myself at home. I even was able to look at my old Amazon purchases to see when I bought the test strips. And then in, I think it was December 2009, I was listening to a podcast of Security Now, which I often did. I think it was on iTunes. It was an August episode, but I was listening to it a little late in December. And Steve Gibson decided to not talk about computers and security for that whole episode, but instead about vitamin D. And he even said on the podcast that he normally wouldn't do this, but if this just helps somebody, he just feels compelled to talk about this. And what he said made a lot of sense, especially since I had moved from a very sunny place to a place that's only sunny for a few months in the summer. I changed jobs, and once my insurance kicked in, which was a few months later in 2010, I decided to go to the doctor and ask for a vitamin D test because these types of tests weren't as readily available as they are now. But the doctor refused. They didn't want to put it on insurance. They just didn't want to do it. I said I'd pay for it. They still didn't want to do it. So I had to actually fight for them to do it. After a few visits, and they finally decided to do it, they found that I was very suboptimal in my level of vitamin D. So they put me on 50,000 IU once a week for 4 weeks, and then my levels came back to normal. And after a few years, this is in 2014, my levels were better, still a little low. But the interesting thing was my exercises and diet actually started working, and my triglycerides almost immediately went back to normal after increasing the amount of vitamin D. Because at that time, multivitamins had like 400 IU, and now people are recommending 1 to 2,000. I've since found out I actually have 2 genetic problems utilizing vitamin D, which is probably why my vitamin D is low, even though I'm taking a much larger dose. So that's something I'm working on now. But if I hadn't listened to that podcast, I never would have thought about this or known. They wanted to put me on statins and all sorts of other drugs, and who knows what would have happened. That podcast is still available. You can look it up on the GRC website, I think. But also you can just search YouTube for, I think, Security Now, Steve Gibson, Vitamin D. And there's a follow-up episode with Leo Laporte and Steve Gibson where they talk about the episode and then play the episode, and that's the best one to watch. I just wanted to say thank you, Steve Gibson, for your podcast. I know when it first aired, you were almost half apologizing for talking about it, but you felt compelled to do it in case it helped somebody. And myself and people like me, probably way more than has ever contacted you to let you know. But I just wanted to let you know that back then, that podcast probably saved my life.